Hey guys, it's Kim here with Fairily Fiber Fun. Thanks for joining me on this cold scouring tutorial. It's been requested that I film how I cold scour wool fleeces, and so I thought I would take you along on the journey. I am setting up to soak first, and I do use these mesh. They are mesh laundry bags that I cut apart and opened up. And this keeps me from accidentally felting the wool. Instead of picking up the wool, I pick up the mesh. Um, and then I'm using a way more wool right now for the pre soak than I would in each bucket for the scouring. So keep that in mind. The pre soak, I'm not worried about it getting clean. I just want the dirt loosened up. But I do explain things periodically through each step of the process. And so, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy.
Okay, so this one is a full fleece but it was small, and I think it's like a pound and a half, somewhere around there. I didn't weigh it, and it wasn't marked, but it is Gulf Coast. Um, this is a whole fleece that's over 2 pounds, and it is barely fitting in here. I will divide this when I go to scour, but for the pre-soak, that's all that's needed. This one here was over 3 pounds, and it did not fit. Close the door. It did not fit in the big bin, so I put some of it in the smaller bin, and technically that should have been 2 big bins, but it'll work out. Pre-soaking, it'll sit here for a few hours and just soak. You can see how nasty the water is on these. This one is not Gulf Coast. I do not know the breed on this one. It could be Polypay, it could be Clun, it could be a bunch of different things. I don't know. I didn't have it marked. So mark your stuff, guys. Mark your stuff. But yeah, these will sit out here and we don't have a hose out back, so we're filling up pans from the kitchen sink and bringing them out the back door to fill up these buckets. They will sit here for 4 or 5 hours, just because that's when we'll be able to work on them. You can leave them overnight. I do not recommend all day and all night, because they will start to ferment and it will be gross. But yeah, this is how I do my pre-soak for the cold scour. I don't blast with the hose right now. These will all be moved to the front of the house where the hose is, once I am ready to do that later this afternoon, and when I can set up the tent so we have some shade.
So now that we're ready to start the actual scouring process, it's time to move the fleeces from the buckets and out of the buckets so that we can move everything to the front porch. So this is the worst part of scouring, but all of that delightfully gross water would be fantastic for your garden. So now I'm dividing these pre-soaked wools into bin appropriate batches. So pretty much just dividing what was in one bin in half so that I can get it really clean, both with the hose and with, um, the soaking. So, and this is the scour. For fleeces that have a lot of lanolin, you'll want to scour twice. But these fleeces are not, they're not high lanolin at all. So I only scour once. And by that, I mean I only use soap once. Um, so I try to, before I blast the tips with the hose, I try to make sure the tips are mostly facing up. And then I turn on the hose to a pretty powerful spray, um, wide enough spray to get a decent amount of wool done at a time, but not so wide that it doesn't have enough power to it. And then you're literally just trying to blast dirt out of those dirty tips. And this is one of the reasons that cold scouring is so effective. Uh, Once I'm done with batch one of blasting the tips, I fill up the buckets about halfway, put some power scour Unicorn Power Scour in there, which I do sell. If anybody wants to order that, I do sell it in several different quantities. It is the absolute best scouring agent I've ever used, and I've tried a bunch. So we like to sort of wring out the dirt, put the fleece back in the bucket, and then we'll blast with the hose again as we continue filling up. I fill up halfway first for the soap scour just to minimize suds, but and to help the soap get everywhere. Because we do want the soap to get thoroughly integrated into the wool and get it nice and clean. And here my son is helping out. You're supposed to flip the fleece over so that the parts you missed the first time you blasted the tips, you can get this time. But it's not the most critical thing in the world. This is just my method, and this is my son's job for the summer. So he is earning money doing this. And here he is blasting the tips. And as you do this, you can see the fleece slowly getting cleaner and cleaner. And all of this hose work really makes the job so much easier. There's a lot less soaking and fiddling and just it just is so easy. So the goal is to have a very harsh hose. You want power, water pressure to get your wool clean. And as long as you're not agitating the fleece, it won't felt. I have never felted a fleece doing this. The most dangerous time is taking it out of the water and putting it back in to the water.
Okay, so this time we have some power scour in here. It's what, 2 or 3 tablespoons of power scour for the big ones, about half of that for the little pans. This is a small fleece divided into 2 pans. This was in one, and it's divided into the 2 because scouring needs a little more space than just pre-soaking. So we're going to let these sit about 15 minutes, and we're going to come out and rinse them again with the hose.
You can let this soak literally until you remember to go out and check on it. But we set a timer because we have a limited amount of time and energy to be working on this, and we want to get it done. So, look at the gross water there. Yuck. The ground gets a bit soggy doing this, but and usually I like to do it on the porch. So we dump it off the porch into the water, into the grass, and then we're standing on the porch. We don't get soggy. Anyway, for this, I had the tent set up, my vending tent for shade, and we were working under that in the yard. So for part of it, not all of it. At some point, I have the tent set up. So once the water's dumped out of the buckets, blast the wool with the hose again. So you got to spread it out on the mesh, blast it thoroughly with the hose. Again, this works better on um, the porch, which is concrete for me, uh, because then you don't get grass clippings and bits, bugs and stuff in your wash water when you put your mesh back in the buckets. But this worked, and I'm not too worried about it. I mean, there's already veg matter in the wool, so a little more isn't going to hurt anything. And you know, but you can really see. I think he's rinsing the buckets now, just so that they're not as dirty. Maybe I did this out of order. I did that out of order. That was part of the scour. Anyway, now we're back to the rinse. Sorry about that, guys. It was really confusing how I labeled stuff for editing later. So, anyway, put it in an empty bucket after you've blasted the tips on the ground. Blast the tips again as you're filling up the bucket to maximize cleaning potential here and minimize labor. There is still dirt coming out of the fleece through the hose, hitting it. which is absolutely fantastic. That looks like my hand. I must be holding the camera and the hose. Talent, guys. Talent. Look at that. Usually I'm not that talented. Anyway, I think you get the idea that it's really just blast your wool with the hose as much as you can. I like to do 2 rinses to get the water clean and get the soap completely out of the wool. Each soak is anywhere from 15 minutes to however long it takes for you to remember that it's out there and needs you to do something else to it. Uh, but I like to do about 15 minutes for these. I do like to fill up the buckets most of the way full. We're on a hill, so I can't fill it up all the way, but you want the wool to be able to move around freely so that the water can circulate through it and do its job of cleaning.
Okay. It's already cold. It wasn't even hot. Yeah, there's a lot that came out of the mesh. See how nasty that water is? Oh, there's the hot water.
Yeah.
That is nasty. We may have to rinse a third time. That one's nasty, nasty. If you'll go ahead and lay that on the ground here, I'll go ahead and start spraying it. Spread it out. And could you turn the hose stronger for me when you're done spreading that out? Okay, there's wool in the water. Thank you. Go ahead and dump that out. And get this one done. Okay. Okay, you ready? Go ahead and do the other one. Okay. So the white fleece, that I do not know what breed it is. It is not Gulf Coast. It was labeled Gulf Coast. This is not what it is. It's very, very white. And I think the second rinse is all it needed, because the water is pretty clear here. A little dirty, but not bad. Some of that's just grass that the mesh picked up from being on the ground. The Gulf Coast, on the other hand, is still quite dirty. So we're going to give this one another rinse. And then we're going to put it through the spin dryer and put it out to dry. Oh, that's silky. So here's the white fleece, or half of it. The other will join it shortly. The other half is in the spin dryer. And it feels a lot like a Gulf Coast BFL mix. Anyway, spin dryer does a good job getting most of the liquid out, and then the sun and the wind and the fresh air does the rest. It's all one fleece. It can be mixed.